Fun Ideas Productions presents the Fun Ideas Podcast.
We see the syphilitic shrinking obelisk, the white man's wilting dick. We see through dangling jowls of seedy game show trolls the smiling lie of the televised hive. The witches are watching with their thousand eyes. Witches are watching with their thousand eyes. We smell rotten teeth that speak beyond belief.
Hi, this is Mark Arnold, and welcome to Fun Ideas Podcast number 68. This episode is sponsored by the fine folks at Lee's Comics. Attention comic book fans, Lee's Comics in Mountain View, California has closed. But here's the good news. Lee's Comics eBay store is still going strong with over 10,000 vintage comics, the majority of which are now on sale, for half off. Choose from Lee's huge stock of golden, silver, bronze, and modern age comics, and specializing in Silver Age Marvel titles. You can count on friendly service, accurate grading, and quick, secure shipping backed by a money-back guarantee. To check out Lee's eBay store, go to eBay. Click Advanced Search to the left of the search bar, scroll down to Sellers, and enter Lee's Comics Inc., period. That's LeeScomics period. Don't forget the period. Lee's Comics is shipping daily with no delays. New items daily. Mention the Fun Ideas Podcast and get a free bonus gift. The following interview was recorded prior to the COVID-19 shutdown. Any appearances mentioned by our guest have either been postponed or canceled. We hope that you and your family are coping during this pandemic. The final episode of this season was scheduled for the first week in May, but since many are quarantined, I have decided to do a few more new episodes during the summer break. Let me know what you think. And here are some recent comments about this podcast. I really appreciate the kind words. Here's a 5-star review on iTunes from the Bucket of Blah Blah. It says, great guest, skilled interview. Arnold has a good pop culture pedigree, so he gets terrific guests and knows the right questions to ask. The ideas presented are indeed fun. Another one from Gallery. Informative and fun interviews of comic insiders. I just listened to Mark Arnold's interview with Peter Bagg. It was excellent. Great history on the hows and why Mr. Bagg got into comics and interesting insights of his career. And here's another one that's on Podomatic from Julia Cole. This is a great interview with P. Bagg, one of my favorite artists. I've been buying his work since the Weirdo days, and I have a complete collection of both neat stuff and hate. This was a real treat to listen to. And now the Fun Ideas Productions news. I'm still waiting for the Warren Kremer book, and I just turned in the Total Television scrapbook. Beetlefest has been postponed from March to October 2020, and our travel agency has also been postponed for the time being. I am currently working on articles about Hee Haw, Sid and Marty Krofft, Underdog, and the Pink Panther for Back Issue magazine, as well as the Mad Book and possibly a Disney book. Our guest today is a comedy writer, and he's also an inventor. Here he is, Roger Brown. Okay, so on the phone today, I have Roger Brown. How are you today?
I'm doing great, Mark. How about yourself?
I'm doing fine. And tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got involved in not only writing for like Cracked and things like that, but also, you do stuff with inventions and patents and things nowadays. So we'll get to all that. But how did you get your start?
Well, I think really my first start was in high school. As you can maybe imagine, most people when they're, have a creative background, have to use it somewhere. And I would get in trouble in school for coming up with weird things that we could do or different things that I would write in class that were supposed to be of a serious nature, and I would make it humorous. And then from there, while I was in high school, one of my friends had told me that a local radio station was looking for someone to write jokes for them for their morning show. So I went to the DJ, talked with him for a little bit to kind of get an idea of what it was he was looking for, and started writing and submitting things to him, which was great since he was local. I could actually go in and meet him face to face, and then about 2 weeks after I started putting things together, I was actually getting paid for things that I used to get detention for in school.
Wow.
And then looking from there, once I saw that, hey, I kind of had a knack for it. And one of the funny things, I guess, or a good training aspect of it was, since it was a daily show, he was wanting something every single day. So he might call me at 5 o'clock that afternoon and tell me, hey, I need 10 jokes on the local mayor or city council or dog catchers or something. And so, I had kind of a timeline because, obviously morning show, that meant from 5 o'clock that night to about 6 o'clock that morning, I had time to try and come up with the, whatever the jokes were, and then get them to him in a timely manner. So I got pretty good as far as you could give me a topic, and I could usually, try and come up with something. Mm-hmm. And then once I saw that I was getting paid for that, I started looking at other areas that might, pay me to do something similar. And so I started looking at all the different magazines. I would go to the local bookstore and just look at the magazines and see if anything in there satirical, or even the cartoons. Mm-hmm. And so basically from there, I started contacting the magazines to get in touch with the cartoonists they had in there, and I started contacting them and started writing for them.
Okay. And was your first work in Cracked, or was it in some other publications?
Good Housekeeping magazine was probably my first national publication, other than everything I had locally. I started writing for some of the cartoonists who were regulars in there. One that comes to mind, his name was Orlando Bucina.
Oh, yeah.
He did a number of cartoons in a wide variety, like Women's Day, Good Housekeeping, Red Book. So it was kind of funny. I was, those were magazines that my mother read. So when she would bring them home, I'm actually going through her magazines looking for places I could sell to some of the cartoonists. And once I started doing that, one of them had told me about the Writer's Market Guide book, which is about an 800-page book that lists all the different publications around the country that you could, try and come up with something. So that just gave me another area to start kind of expanding, what I was doing from there. And then I guess also at that same time, I was an avid comic book fan, so I was also in the back of my mind thinking about, hey, maybe I could branch off into doing something there, once I got a little better at what I was doing.
And when you were doing the magazine things, was it mainly gags with cartoons, or did you actually write stories as well, or just gags by themselves, or anything like that?
A little of both. I found that I was doing better with the gags with the cartoonists because at one point I was writing for a little over 20 different cartoonists, so that kept me busy, just trying to come up with things for each one of their styles and some of the others. I don't know if you'd be familiar, like in the Sunday paper, the Parade magazine.
Oh, yeah.
Hoist had a cartoon that showed up there pretty much every Sunday called Howard Hughes with a big dog as a character.
Yeah.
I wrote some of the gag material for his characters, which was kind of fun doing that with a lot of the different cartoonists because, like I said, I've always been a big fan of just humor in general. So for me to get to write for a lot of the people that I had grown up reading a lot of their stuff just for the enjoyment of it, it was really a real big thrill for me.
Mm-hmm. And did you ever branch off into like writing for like stand-up comedians or for TV or anything like that as well, or just sticking with publications?
I actually had submitted, that was kind of weird too. I had submitted some material to Saturday Night Live, and it was kind of an interesting thing the way they had set it up, because originally when I had contacted them, the producer, Lauren Michaels, sent me a note back saying that they didn't look at outside scripts, but they did read nude photographs. And so, being the weird person that I am, I wrote another script and I stapled it to a nude photograph and sent it to him. I heard back from them about 2 weeks later, and they said if they were going to buy from me that I would have to do it in bulk, so they wanted like 30 or 40 scripts. So I started working up all the different things, and this is when, unfortunately, it was about the same time Bill Murray and John Belushi and all them were leaving Saturday Night Live, and a lot of stuff I'd written was geared toward their characters.
Yeah.
And so I kind of got in the thing of where I had a lot of material, but then it was geared to the wrong people. So I started to do it over, but then when I wrote back to them, I was getting answers back from other people within there, and it was just getting harder because I didn't have an agent. And so I was also making some headway with Marvel Comics and some of those, so I just kind of drifted back into that direction.
I see. And according to your website, things you've written, I'm only really familiar with like your kind of more humorous stuff, but what type of stuff did you do for Marvel and DC? Things like that.
Well, on DC, I did a lot of the stuff for the Looney Tunes and the Tiny Toons magazine and comic book that they had.
Mm-hmm.
And Marvel Comics, I wrote for Namor. I wrote for the Spider-Man magazine, Disney Afternoon, their What the book of the humorous.
Oh, yeah. I remember that. It was like not Brand Deck or whatever.
Right. Yeah, I wrote for most of those publications for about 4 or 5 years. Did Goof Troop, Darkwing Duck, Mighty Ducks, Rescue Rangers. Like the majority of the more humor-oriented characters.
Got it. Mm-hmm.
I also wrote for Sonic the Hedgehog at Archie Comics.
Uh-huh. And it also mentions Lane McCann. What is that? I don't know if I'm familiar with that publisher. Or is that a comic book?
Yeah, Lane. Well, it's Lane Morgan.
Morgan. I can't read my own writing.
No, that's fine. They did a lot of. It was funny. The Catholic Church hired them to do comic books, but comic book stories, but on the saints. So it was it was like the history or the origin kind of background of the various different saints, but in comic book form, and they were going to give them out to the different Catholic churches, I guess, to kind of help, inspire some of the younger readers to learn more about them.
Mm-hmm.
I did about 5 or 6 of those for them.
Okay. And Acclaim Publishing, you mentioned that. What did you do for them?
Yeah, Acclaim, Bloodshot, the Disney action book that they had.
Oh, yeah.
And I did and it was kind of funny, I kind of built myself at one time. I was the most unpublished paid writer because a lot of times you would have stories that they would say, hey, we need a filler story for like Ninjak or Iron Man or somebody else, and I would write the story, but then I would get paid for the story, but the opportunity for it to get slotted into the line may not come up, so they would just keep it in the folder. So if someone called in sick or something happened, as long as the story didn't mess up with the storyline of wherever the character was at the time, they could use my script. So that's why I was always saying, I got paid for a lot of stuff that never actually got published.
Wow. Now, do you still work on that type of stuff today? Because I know DC still publishes like Looney Tunes. I know like Disney Comics appears through like IDW and other publishers. Do you still pursue that at this point, or no?
Not at this point. One of the things I've been actually trying to do is I've got some different books that I'm working on myself, humor books. Mm-hmm. One of them I'm doing, I don't know if people are familiar, there was an older book that for some reason that's always stuck with me. It was 101 Uses for a Dead Cat.
Oh yeah, I remember that book.
Cool. Okay, well I've got something in kind of that same vein called How to Use Your Frog Properly.
Okay.
And then, and then so I'm putting together a bunch of different things like that I would like to, get published and then kind of go that route.
Okay.
Give me another outlet for my humor in that area.
Got it. And let's see. So, the main reason where I know you for the, of course, is Cracked Magazine. So, when did you start working there, and how did you get involved with them?
I started working for them. It was in 1983, and I wrote for them from '83 to 1993.
Oh, okay.
I was pretty much in every issue but one, and that was because the artist had gotten sick and was delayed getting the work to them. So I missed one issue. But that was kind of the same thing. When I was doing the work for the other cartoonists, I talked with one of the cartoonists that I was doing some work with on the side and trying to get some other things going. And he had mentioned Cracked Magazine, and I'd already been a reader of Cracked Magazine and Mad, and so I was like, hey, this is great. And so I contacted the editor at the time was Mike Delfemini.
Oh, yeah.
And got in touch with him and sent him some samples of my other work that he liked. And so he told me to start, sending some things. And the second script that I sent him, he bought from me, and pretty much it was a good run all the way through from there. I had come up with some different features that I thought could be just regulars in there. One of them was called one-shots. Mm-hmm. That I did for probably 4 years with them. Let's see, Mike Rosigliano was the artist on that. Mm-hmm. We did a series called Long Shots and another one called Hazards of. Mm-hmm. And then also, Cracked was kind of known for doing the Cracked lens, where it was pictures with a different gag caption. Mm-hmm. I did that probably for about 8 years.
Oh, wow. Okay. The very, very, very last one. Anyway. Now, did you choose to work with Michael? Because I know you probably worked with Mike Rosigliano more than anybody else over there. Was that your choice, or did they assign you that?
No, I had met him through another, like a comic book convention, and had met him there and knew he was writing, drawing for Cracked, and his style really fit my sense of humor. And Mike was just phenomenal as far as I could give him something, and what I saw in my head, he could make it come alive on the paper. And to me, he made it funnier than even what I thought the gag would be. For like Mad Magazine, a lot of people are familiar with the marginals that Sergio Aragonés would do on the borders of the pages.
Right. Mm-hmm.
I still love those. They're just silent gags. So that's kind of what I was looking at with the one shots and the long shots. They were just silent gags, but instead of where he does like a single panel on there, I would do four or more panels on a page type of thing. But each one would be its own little gag. Mm-hmm. Which I actually got to meet Sergio at one of the comic book conventions, and for him, he was one of my inspirations. Coming up, looking at all the stuff, and I used to buy all of his books with those. So So to get to meet him at the comic book convention, and then he even mentioned reading my stuff and liking it. That was another one of those kind of just fun moments for me to be recognized by somebody else that I liked their work also.
Mm-hmm. And tell us about how you went about writing like a one-shot. Was it, did you sketch them out, or can you not draw, or did you just write it out completely?
Yeah, pretty much I would write everything out. I can draw, but I'm very limited and I'm slow. Mm-hmm. And then for the pace that we had to do for the different magazines and comic books, by the time I write it, they get it to a penciler, inkers, colorist, and all that. You don't have a lot of time. So I was better off just saying, okay, in panel 1, this is going on. Panel 2, this is going on. Person on the left says blah, blah, blah. This person's doing this. This one has this expression, and so on. Until you got to the final gag, at the end of what was going on. Mm-hmm. And a lot of those, I've always had kind of I guess a different slant on how I see things in life, and so I'll wander stores, or I like watching people, and I'll see them do certain things, or I always do the, I guess, kind of what if, what if Batman, did this, or what if so and so did this, and so that's kind of my inspiration for, I guess, the gags or the sight gags. I'm trying to think of something that's funny that visually you can look at. I like the sight gags better because they're more universal. You don't have to understand the language, because I've gotten things from people in France, Germany, and all over that just like it because visually they get the gag.
Mm-hmm. And did you have total free reign to basically write about what you wanted, or did you get a direction from whichever editor you were working under during that time?
No, the majority of the time, they just let me do whatever I wanted,
that's cool.
Which was great. Because from the standpoint of like the hazards of, I would do like a page that was the hazards of golf, and then I'd go like, well, the hazards of being a babysitter, the hazards of going to the dentist. So any theme I could pick up, Mike liked my sense of humor. So I would say my rejection rate was maybe 2%.
Wow.
of what I would send him. So I mean, I was pretty good. And then, like I said, I attribute a lot of that to Mike Rosigliano also. That, like I said, he made stuff that to me was even funnier than what I thought.
Right. Now, you said again that you worked at Crack from 83 to 93, is that correct?
Yes.
So, there's some editorial changes. I think you started out originally under the Sproul family, Robert Sproul and
Right.
Bill Sproul and everything. What was it like working back then versus later on?
Really, I really didn't see that big of a change on things, other than maybe Mike would give me a little direction sometimes, just because he wanted he'd tell me like this issue's going to be more on, like say the presidential election, or it's going to be on NASCAR or something of that nature, or NASA.
Okay, this is Michael Delfamine, you mean, or
Yep.
Also known as Mort Todd. He's been on the show, and we always say Mort Todd, but okay. Just so we're not confusing with the other Michael. So, yeah, Michael Delfamine, okay. So he gave you more direction than, say, the Sprouls did.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say maybe about 50% of it under Mike. It was. He still gave me a wide range. He just kind of gave me a theme. Like he would just say, "Can you send me something on NASA?" And then I would just try and come up with something in that general direction.
Okay. And then later on, he left, and the last couple of years, I think you're working under Lou Silverstone and possibly Andy Simmons, or was he there yet?
Yeah, under Lou.
Yeah.
That was probably my most difficult time there when they transitioned from that, because it was weird. Lou, it was kind of a weird phrasing on him. He didn't give you a lot of direction, and I understand everybody has different tastes in humor, And I would send him some things, and he goes, "This is really funny, but it's not what I'm looking for." And so I would ask him, I'd say, "Well, can you kind of give me an idea where you're wanting me to go?" And all he would ever say is, "I'll know it when I see it."
Oh, boy.
which really doesn't give you a lot of help.
Yeah.
So you go like, okay, so, it was a little bit more trial and error there to finally kind of get a good grasp of where he was wanting to go with things. But, like I said, it's with anything else. And rejection's part of the industry. So I never took offense to somebody saying, well, I don't get it, or I don't really think it's funny, or it's okay, but just not what I'm wanting.
Mm-hmm.
I would just try and talk to them or something and find out a little more of, okay, well, what is your style of humor? If they kind of say like Steve Martin or the Three Stooges, it kind of gives me an idea of which way I need to go with something.
Mm-hmm. Now, is Lou's kind of cryptic rejections the reason you left Cracked, or were you just kind of burnt out anyway after 10 years of doing it?
I was actually getting more work in comic books at that time. So I was kind of going, the amount of time I was going to spend doing that, I already knew I could do this over here. Plus, you were writing 22 pages worth of material versus maybe 4 or 5 pages of material, with Cracked. So I was like, well, just from a money ratio, I was getting paid more to do the others, so I kind of leaned more in that area.
I see. And when you're doing, when you're doing like the comic book stories, same type of question. I mean, did you have free reign about what subject to cover, whether you're writing for Looney Tunes or Disney or anything else, or did you have a lot of restriction? How did that work?
Really wasn't a lot of restriction on any of them. The main thing they wanted was it was something they liked. If I like with Looney Tunes, as long as I could fit it within, they tell you, hey, we're looking for something that would run 3 pages, 7 pages, and I would just send them a small blurb. Like I tell them, a lot of people, the blurb you see on the back of a paperback book, kind of gives you an overview of the 300 pages of the book.
Right.
And kind of based on that, you're going, yeah, this sounds interesting. So I would kind of send that small of a blurb to them for the 5 pages or 22 pages that I was going to write. And based on that, they would say, yeah, that's a direction, or they would, about the only direction I would really get is don't kill off characters, because obviously, they don't want certain characters to die. And then others, they would just tell you, make it generic enough that it would fit in no matter where they wanted to put it. So if they had to hold it for 6 months, it would still fit in without people going, well, why did that happen? Mm-hmm. So you could make just a standalone story.
Now, when you submitted to those publications, did you write it like a movie script, or did you storyboard it, or both? How did you send those type of submissions in?
More like a movie script. I would say scene 1, this is going on, or panel 1, this is going on, these are the people talking, this is the verbiage that, character 1 saying, character 2. And it was a little harder for me to adjust at first, and then I kind of caught on because the comic book industry, the way they set things up is a little different than, say, Cracked magazine set theirs up, because I would write the whole the script and everything for the page that was going on, or the different themes and everything that's there, and pretty much I'd say 95-98% of the time it came out the way I had it written. For comic books, I would say, okay, we need 6 panels on this page and this, and what they would do is they would draw it up, send it back to me, then I would work in where the word balloons went and the dialogue for those word balloons to go in. Then it would be sent on to the penciler, inker, and all this. And a lot of times when it came back, where I thought they needed 6 panels to get the point across, I would have 4. I still had to get the same amount of verbiage into 4 panels, or I had to rearrange the verbiage so that it now fit the 4 panels, but you still understood the story as it went along. So that was kind of interesting to me, because I couldn't go back to the editor and say, hey, I wanted 6 panels on this page. He needs to redraw it. They would make it work.
Yeah.
So that was a bit of an adjustment, but it didn't take me long to kind of get the handle of it. And, again, the way I looked at it was, I'm trying to give them a product they want, so I will adjust it to how they want it.
Did they, like with Cracked, you worked primarily with Michael Risigliano. Did you have any artists that you worked specifically with, or was it just like a crapshoot every time you turned in something?
Kind of a crapshoot. I had some things that I could kind of say, hey, look, Rick Tyler, who also worked for did work for Cracked.
Mm-hmm.
He also did work with them, and so did Gary Fields.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew both of them, so a lot of times I would have a story idea. I would go to Rick or Gary and say, hey, I'm looking at putting in this script. Take a look at it. If it's something you like, if you'll draw like a sample page of it, we can send it in together. And if they like it, they'll just tell you to draw it.
Oh.
Which that worked out good on a number of cases. But then the other ones, I would send it in, and it'd be someone I've never even heard of before, drew it. Mm-hmm. Like working with Disney, a lot of the people that drew for the Disney Adventures book were from Argentina.
Mm.
Which was kind of fascinating to me when you looked at globally where something went before it got finally published. Because you may have me living in South Carolina, the penciler lives in California, the inker is in Argentina, the letterers in New York, and the colorist, I had one where the colorist was from England, but everybody had to get all their stuff done and together within 22 days in order for it to be published on time.
Wow. Now, did you talk with any of these people, or did you primarily just talk with the editor?
Mainly the editor. Now, some of the artists, that I'd already worked with or things of that nature, yes, but like with a lot of the work that I did for Disney, I never talked to anybody that ended up doing my work. I only talked with the editor.
Okay, so if you had like some sort of disagreement with something, you'd just go to the editor about it or something, right?
Right.
Got it. Okay. And
but yeah.
And I know you said you're trying to get back into it and trying to publish a book, but was there a reason why you stopped all that and moved on to what we're eventually going to talk about, all these stuff with inventions, or did it just kind of die a natural death and you were just looking for something else to do?
Well, the weird thing was at the time I was doing the comic books and writing for Cracked, I was also a reactor operator in a nuclear facility. But we weren't, it wasn't a power generating nuclear reactor. It was making weapons grade plutonium, uranium, for nuclear weapons. So it was kind of a weird thing during the day. I'm doing, because I was on rotating shift, so it was like nights, days, different things. So I would go from running a nuclear reactor to trying to write something on Batman, Spider-Man, whoever, something funny. And so it was kind of weird. Like I said, when I'd go to the bookstore, I was buying Scientific American, Time Magazine, Batman and Robin, The Flash, Cracked Magazine, all this stuff. So when the person ringing me up would go like, you have a wide range of reading. And I'm like, yeah, but I needed it for what I was doing.
Now, how did you end up in that vocation, as it were?
Where I live in South Carolina, that's one of the larger employers in this area. At its height, there were 22,000 employees working out there. When I first started out there was only about 8,000.
Mm-hmm.
But it was the only facility like that. It's a 220,000 acre facility area, and had all these reactors and other facilities on it. And they were hiring, and so I went and applied for the job, and they have you go through all this testing and everything. And I've got 5 years of college but no degree because I kept changing majors.
Oh.
I started out as a pre-med major, then I went to broadcast journalism, and then I ended up working in a nuclear facility.
Oh, wow.
So,
no wonder you buy so many magazines now.
So it's, like I said, if you look at my resume, it kind of goes all over the board. It sounds like it ought to be 4 or 5 other people's resumes in part, but nope, it's all me.
Now, what type of things did you do there? I mean, it's like when I hear nuclear reactor, which I'm sure other people listening may think this is like it's Homer Simpson dropping the green bar and running home from work or something. Is it like that, or is it completely mundane, or what do you do in that type of situation?
Oh no, well, we're doing pretty much what you're saying. We're moving the rods up and down inside of the reactor, but instead of generating power, we're doing it to manipulate the isotopes in the rods to convert them, say, from uranium-235 to uranium-238.
Oh.
And then once it goes through that process, it's taken and separated out, and then they make what they need to send to the military for weapons facilities. We also one of the things I thought was kind of neat too, because like I said, I'm a space geek, and I love Star Trek and Star Wars and all that stuff. Some of the plutonium and different things that we developed there were used in NASA's batteries for like the Voyager satellites and on the space shuttle, different things of that nature. We also made medical isotopes like barium and other things there also.
And do you still do that to this day, or was that just at that time?
No, I did that for 20 years and then left. From there after 20 years.
And did you continue on in any sort of similar field, or did everything else take precedent in your life, like what we're going to talk about again?
That's really, I guess, where the inventing part came in, because I started doing the inventing while I was there, and realized, here's again, it comes from that creative process of kind of looking outside the box at things, because in that type of environment where we're working there, you're like if you were working in a power nuclear, a lot of things are similar between all the other power nuclear facilities that you're involved with. Since we're making a totally different product, you're kind of singular to what you're doing. So a lot of things that would come up, you had to come up with on your own and devise certain things to do what you wanted them to do. And I found I had a knack for it. I was the only non-engineer working in the engineering department at one time because of the, again, I guess the aspect of how I look at things. To give you an example, we had to the engineering department was supposed to come up with a device that would reach 35 feet down into this underground storage tank that holds liquid radioactive material, and you had to grab something that was in there, bring it out a 10-inch hole, and basically it's a one-use type item, because then because of the contamination and radioactivity, you have to send it off to be buried. What they designed and came up with was going to run about $82,000. Well, you're only using it once, so it's $82,000 to use it one time and then get rid of it. I looked at what they were thinking of doing, and I actually came up with a method to do the same thing using PVC pipe, aircraft cable, and it cost under $300.
Wow.
And they tried it out. It worked perfectly. They buried it, but they only buried $300, not $82,000.
Okay, I was going to ask, was it reusable? But it really doesn't matter at that point when it's that cheap, I guess. So,
Yeah, and so from shortly after that, they kind of had me doing my regular job, but then they would have me look over these different things they were looking at doing, or they would say, hey, we've got this problem. What do you think, to see if I could come up with something easier? And I always use the KISS method. So a lot of things I would come up with, they would work, but it wasn't this really elaborate type setup. So it was kind of weird. Like I said, I was working with 22 other engineers. I'm the only non-engineer in their meetings. So there was a little bit of hostility from their end of it because, again, they've got the degree and all of that, and here I am, kind of doing a little better on some of their stuff. I guess to give you an example, we had a job that I hated doing, and that goes back to the same thing. Frustration a lot of times will give you good creativity on this. This job was basically, in order to go into these environments, like I said, everything you took in there basically ended up having to be buried other than you, and which always made me kind of look at that kind of funny too. But you would take hoses, cables, extension cords, all these different things, breathing air lines, all these things in, they would all have to be thrown away and buried. And just what you ended up doing, though, was taking some of these materials, and it's basically like if you'd say an 8-inch wide trash bag that's 200 feet long and open on both ends. You would have to push like the extension cord through that sleeving in order to take it in, plug it in a wall, what we call a clean area that wasn't contaminated, take it into an area that was contaminated, and you utilize it, and you could pull it out through the sleeve, keep the extension cord, and throw away the sleeving. Well, that would take two people about 45 minutes to do a 200-foot hose. So you would spend 2 days doing this to all this different equipment so that you could work on the third day using everything you put the sleeving around. And I was looking at that particular job, and I'm going, there's got to be a better way of doing this. Well, I came up with this tube inside a tube where you put the sleeving on the one tube, ran what you wanted sleeved through the tube, and when it came out the other way, I could pull it where it took two people 45 minutes. I could pull it through in myself in under a minute.
Wow.
So they really, that was a labor savings and waste reduction, plus everything that you took in this way, you could now keep. It saved just that one facility $4 million a year in reduced waste.
Wow. Now, these inventions and any others we may talk about, I mean, did you get paid for them or get any patents on it or anything about it? Or is it just kind of like, I did it and then they kind of took ownership of it? How did that work?
Well, the ones that I did for out there, since it was under this, which is really, this is kind of just really funny on both ends. To kind of give you an overview, I was writing for Cracked Magazine and all these different publications at the time when I got hired out there. Because of the nature of the work and the security clearance level that I had to have, they checked your background and everything else. Okay, well, I had to give them a copy of everything I had written for like the last 5 years so that they could make sure that it wasn't anti-nuclear or anti-America, subversive material, any of this nature. So the FBI is checking me out. Okay, well, what I didn't know at the time was how the FBI was approaching different places. And this was one of the times, too, about when Sproul and them were taken over. Not Sproul, the last editor.
Silverstone? Lou Silverstone?
Yeah. They were buying things from me, and all of a sudden they stopped. And I couldn't figure out why. And he wasn't really answering my questions. People at Marvel Comics and DC Comics all of a sudden stopped, too. And I couldn't figure out why. And I'm like, I would call them, and they were always in a meeting or couldn't come to the phone, take a message, but they would never call me back. So I called one of the editors at Marvel, and I gave the name of another writer as being me. So he answered the phone. So I said, before you hang up, I'm just trying to find out what's going on. And all he told me was, look, we don't want any problem with the FBI. We're like, what are you talking about? And he said, well, the FBI called us asking about you and all this other stuff. And I said, well, it was for job security clearance. And he said, they didn't say that. He said, they just wanted to know what they knew about me and what I had written and stuff, and they never bothered to tell them it was for clearance at my job.
Oh, boy.
Well, so obviously no one wanted to be associated with me, thinking I'm in trouble with the FBI.
Right.
So I ended up having to have the FBI write letters to all of them saying it was for job clearance, not that I'd done anything wrong, and then all of a sudden people started buying from me again.
Wow. That's lucky.
So the weird thing was, when I started doing the inventions out at the plant there, the facility, everything was okay, and what I did, since it was government used, I didn't really see anything from it, other than I would get like a bonus and things of that nature. But I started thinking about it. I'm going like, well, shoot, I could do this on the outside too. So I started looking at toys and all these other things. Mm-hmm. Well, in order to send a toy to, say, Mattel, Hasbro, or any other place, I would have to submit the toy idea to the government to get a release form stating that it is not nuclear related.
Right. Wow.
And get a release from them saying it's okay for me to send this yo-yo to Whammo. So it was really weird, because I was coming up with a lot of things, for the outside. And so every one of them I was doing, I would have to fill out 7 pages of paperwork for every idea that I had to submit to the company I was working for. They, in turn, would have to put my 7 pages with the 9 pages they were doing and submit all that to DOE. DOE, in turn, would review all of it, submit 5 pages from them saying it was released back to them, and then they would send me that whole package saying it's okay for me to go ahead.
Wow.
And my first thing was, I'm sitting there going, look, all right, right off the bat, why are we doing all this paperwork? Look, I'm working on a yo-yo. Tell me how a yo-yo has anything to do with anything we do in a nuclear weapons facility.
Wow.
But I still had to do the paperwork. So at one point, I kind of got, well, okay, I'm just going to make this as horrible on them as it is on me. I had over 111 different ideas for toys, tools, kitchen items.
Wow.
That were not nuclear oriented. I spent almost 3 weeks filling out all this paperwork and submitted it all at one time to them. And they called me up front, the vice president of the company, called me up front, wanted to know, what in the world am I doing, with all of this stuff. And I told them, I'm just following y'all's protocol and waiting on it, for you to send it back to me. So it was hilarious. But they did all 111 of them.
Wow. Now, what was the upshot of that? I mean, you got through all that. Did any or all of these toys or products see release, or how did that work?
Yeah, every one of them I turned in got released back to me, which was great. Right. And then, then I started shopping them around, and I've gotten altogether, I've gotten 16 different items in the toy, tool, kitchen, eyewear, and pet industry licensed, to where I was getting paid royalties on them.
Can you name a couple of them?
One of them is it's called pizza scissors. It was done. It's a little different. Most people use the pizza wheel,
right?
And a lot of people will complain that the wheel, when you press down on the pizza pan, it makes like a divot in it, scratches it up, and all this. And then plus, it's a pain in the rear to clean where the wheel goes through the two spokes, that hold the wheel to the handle.
Right.
Well, I came up with a type of scissors that was easy to use to cut through it, and then you could also turn it sideways and use it as a spatula to serve it, and it came apart quickly. So when I sent it to the company, they fell in love with it, liked it.
Okay.
Purchased it from me. Another one was a sunglass visor clip like you have in your car.
Mm-hmm.
To hold your sunglasses. The one that had it's got like a little button you push and a jaw, and it takes two hands to work with it. I had them. They broke easy. They wouldn't hold every size sunglass, and it took two hands to operate it. Well, that's not good while you're driving. Well, I came up with a way of doing it with one hand. You didn't need a button to open this jaw, and it would hold any size sunglasses. So I sent that to Sunglass Hut, and they liked it and licensed it from me. So I just kind of pick different areas. Like my wife said, I'm probably the opposite of most women and guys when they go shopping. The guy normally wants to, when can we leave? Well, my wife, I think, has the opposite part of that, because I'm going, I'm going to go to the toy section. Or, I'm going to go look at the tools, And, I'm in there just looking at how everything works, operates, and I'm looking for contact information off of all of the different boxes to see if it's a company I'm already dealing with or a new one that I can approach. So she has basically the opposite of me. She comes to me going, hey, we can go now.
Now, I know nothing about inventing about the process. So when you're inventing something, let's just use your pizza scissors as an example. How would you, or where would you approach somebody with this? Hey, I got this great idea for pizza scissors. I mean, you don't go to your local pizzeria and say, hey, I got this idea. I mean, you don't really have a writer's guide like the big book you're talking about. So is there a place for inventors to go if they have an idea such as that?
Well, not really. The bad thing with it's another one of those learning curves type of thing. Now, I've actually written a book myself, an ebook called Common Sense Inventing, where I kind of go through all the stuff that I've done in order to get things to market cheaper. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, a lot of inventors will spend thousands and thousands of dollars on their idea without first looking at the idea and seeing what else is out there. Kind of like, even basing it, say, on comic books. If I wrote a story for a new character that got bit by a radioactive spider,
yeah.
Obviously it shows I'm not real familiar with the comic book industry, and I didn't do my homework to see what else is out there.
Right.
The same thing applies to inventing. You have to kind of look at what's already in that area. And so, like, if like with the sunglass visor clip or the pizza scissors, I've heard several different people complain about the same thing about, the messing up the pizza pan and trying to clean the thing and all that. Mm-hmm. So I went and looked in Walmart and some of the kitchen stores like Williams, Sonoma, and some other places, and went online to see what is actually out there. And then based on that, I kind of look at, okay, how can I make it more user-friendly and still do what the others are doing? And so once I kind of have that in my head, hey, this is something I want to do, I looked at all the different companies that produce different things, and I'll just start picking some of those companies And I write basically the same thing like you do for comic books or for Cracked. I'll write a small blurb of what my idea is. And if, Rick Tyler helped me on a number of things where he drew what we call a sell sheet. This is like a 1-2 page thing, kind of giving you a visual of what we think the item would be, and then you write text of, why it's user friendly, how, why would the consumer want it, that kind of a thing, to kind of pique their interest. And based on that, if you go to my website, rogerbrown.net, you can see examples of the sell sheets, and that's all I sent to the company. I didn't patent it. I didn't do all these other things that you see everybody doing.
Yeah.
And which was really unusual from other people that invent things. They spent like $30,000 on patents and prototypes and all these different things. I've never spent over $100 on anything I've come up with to send to a company. The sunglass visor clip that I did, I had $8 invested in that. And they all tell you, you have to patent it before you show it to a company. You have to do this. You have to do something. It's a lie. You don't. Companies are looking for good ideas that are marketable.
Yeah.
It's just you just got to present them in a fashion that they, like with the comic books and the others, that they get the idea that you're trying to get across. And the biggest thing I tell a lot of the inventors, would you rather read a pamphlet or a novel to get my idea? Mm-hmm. Because there's a thing they call the elevator pitch. If you and I walked onto the elevator and you're like Progressive International, you own the company, and I happen to walk on the elevator with you, I don't know what floor you're going to get off on, but before you get out of that elevator, could I give you my pitch for my pizza scissors where you would understand it and see if you had interest before the doors opened and you walked out?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Well, it's the same thing with comic books and with Cracked. You're trying to get their attention quickly because, they get pages and pages of people sending them stuff, and they have to read through it. At the same time, they're trying to edit the book and all the work that they're doing. So you want to make it as simple and easy on them as possible to get the idea, and they say, hey, yeah, this is an interesting plot idea or storyline or invention. They all work the same way.
Right. I guess the reason why everybody thinks you have to get a patent and everything is the worry that some company might steal your idea. Is that something to be concerned about, or have you never had a problem with that?
I've never had a problem. And again, it comes down to how you approach people. Normally, I will send something to a company, and if I said, hey, I've got a kitchen utensil that works like a pizza cutter, will not damage the pizza pan, is easier to use, can be used as a spatula, and is dishwasher safe. I haven't told them how I'm going to do it. I haven't sent them a picture of it. But based on that, they can go, yeah, that sounds interesting. I'd like to know more. Mm-hmm. So I've already established a correspondence between me and them, and normally they'll send me, or I have my own, a non-disclosure agreement that, they'll keep it confidential. I'll keep whatever they tell me confidential, and you send it to them based under that. And one of the things that I've always found with people that patent things, the patent is only as good as the person who wrote it and your ability to defend it. Right. So, you think if you went, you look at the one, was it Mattel, the Bratz doll, between them and I think the other company was called MGA, I'm not positive on that, but those two were going after each other over who had ownership of that thing. Mm-hmm. They spent like $23 million in court. Do you know the general person that, in your neighborhood that could go against Disney or Mattel and outlast them in a court battle.
Right.
And then you have the other issue of what I call what started out a dog ends up a cat. What you send them and the final product that comes out in the store may look totally different because, what you have is a good idea and everything, but in order for them to make it more marketable to the consumer, they may have to do some tweaks or changes to it, or they find out engineering-wise what you thought would not work that way, but they can still accomplish the same thing by doing this.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, them doing that, again, comes down to, like I'm saying, what you thought visually would be a dog ends up a cat on the shelf. Well, if you patented the dog, it doesn't cover the cat they're selling.
Yeah, makes sense.
So I always tell them, it's fine to cover yourself with paperwork, and any company that would say, we never heard of your idea, whatever, I have a nice paper trail between me and them showing them asking to see my idea, my blurb of explaining the idea, then the sell sheets and everything I sent them, and either their acceptance or their rejection email of it. So if they all of a sudden come out with it, it's going to be real hard for them to say they never heard of it.
Right, yeah.
And most large companies, if you have what I call realistic expectations dealing with them, most of them are pretty upfront and, honest on how they deal with you on things. Granted, yes, I have seen some inventors get ripped off really bad, but a lot of that came from them not reading the contract they were given to sign.
Right.
Where, I'm from working in the nuclear facility, you had to be very, I guess anal is a good word, on meticulous, because one, you didn't want to cause a meltdown or some other problems. So I got very good at reading things to kind of look for any kind of discrepancy, anything wrong. So I've never had to use a lawyer on anything I've done, but I feel very confident with what I'm signing. That I'm protected and I'm going to be compensated.
Mm-hmm. Now, typically when you are compensated, do you tend to make it a one-time only compensation or a royalty situation or both?
Everything I've done so far has been royalty. Normally I get an advance and then I get ongoing royalties as long as the item sells.
That's cool.
And in most cases, what I do then also is in the contract, it'll say that, the product sells for 10 years. They patent and the company that licensed it patents it. If they decide we're no longer interested in it and they're no longer going to sell it, they will give me the rights to the item back for me to pursue it with someone else, and I will also get assigned the patent.
Okay. And that's all detailed in whatever agreement you set up?
Correct.
Okay, good. Okay, because I was saying, not a good assumption if you just think that's going to happen, but I get it, and I'm sure you've done this long enough that you cross all your T's and dot your I's and things like that. So
I go under the trust but verify.
Right. Now, it also says that you're an invention consultant, so I guess you, with your book and just by talking to people, you do like what we're talking about now. You just kind of consult people as they come to you with an idea and they say, I have this great idea, but I don't know how to market it. I don't know how to get it to a company, and you'll offer them advice probably for a fee. Is that correct?
Yes. I've gotten a little more selective in the last year or two. I worked for about 3.5 years for a company called Edison Nation. Mm-hmm. And they were a company where they would have invention searches and other things, and they would say, hey, Westinghouse is looking for the next great light bulb or whatever item, or Kraft is looking for a new type of food out there, or storage containers, Ziplocs looking for new bags. And you would have all these people submit these ideas into the company. You would vet through all of those, narrow it down to, say, the best 20 items, out of the 4,000 or 5,000 you may have come in, and then present that to the company. They would narrow it down to one or two, and then from there you kind of go back and forth, and they would maybe hopefully license one or both, and then you run your next search. I did that for like I said, about 3.5 years. So I got real proficient at looking at things to kind of get an idea. Yes, this is marketable. No, it isn't. Oh, this is already out there. This is not better than what's currently on the market, and things of that nature. So I did that, and then, like I said, I was inventing, had gotten things licensed prior to working for them. Worked for them for 3.5 years, and licensed things after working for them, and that's when I went ahead and wrote the book also. Because I was getting asked, like you say, by so many different inventors. I'm on a lot of the inventor forums that are on the web, on the internet, answering questions and things like that for people. I had to kind of go where I'm a lot more selective who I deal with, because unfortunately, inventors, some of them have issues with rejection. To put it, I guess, nicely.
I get what you mean, but yeah, it's just funny without getting into details. I'm just thinking about that.
Oh yeah, I mean, and I guess from my end of it, I understand both sides of the industry. I understand it as an inventor. I understand it as a company looking for something you want to put on the store shelf. So I'm in that unique position of I understand both sides' complaints, and what both sides do good, both sides do bad. That's what I try to cover in my book, so inventors can kind of understand. You can have your idea rejected, even when the company will tell you, "Hey, we love the thing. It'll probably sell millions of units, but it's just not what we're wanting." So I mean, a lot of good ideas get turned down. Same thing like with Cracked Magazine, when he tells you, I'm not sure what I want, but I'll know it when I see it. Well, you get the companies that say the same thing.
Yeah.
And some people don't, inventors don't have a good grasp of when a company says, yeah, this would sell millions of units, why they would say no to doing that. Some of them would discuss things about whether you had parents, just all sorts of really nasty things. So I had to kind of limit, the amount of people that I worked with things just because of that. When you tell them their baby's ugly, a lot of people just don't take that in a good way.
That's a nice way to put it. So at this point, I guess you mentioned earlier you're doing some new books and things like that. But I guess continuing on with these inventions is probably going to be something you're going to continue to do for the foreseeable future and things like that.
Oh yeah, I love doing that, and like I said, I guess from my end of it, that's why I'm trying to do the books and things of that nature, because there's not a lot of humor magazines and other things out there now as a good outlet. Everybody's going to like videos on YouTube and cat videos and different things of that nature. So I'm looking for another outlet for that side of me, the creativity part of it. So, but I also like the inventing part of it, because you still get that same thing no matter which one of them you're doing, whether it was doing for Cracked Magazine, doing for comic books, or inventing. It's really neat to see something you thought of in a store on a shelf somewhere, and then while you're standing there, see other people buy it.
Right.
Not really that you did that.
Yeah.
Because that was like the sunglass visor clip that I did. I was riding in the car of a friend of a friend, and I noticed they had my visor clip on their visor in their car. And they were surprised that I did that. They were thinking I had to live in New York or work for the company or did something of that nature. So they were really surprised, that just an average person could do something like that.
Right. You probably said, I invented that. Sure you did.
Yeah. But it was funny because I said, okay, look up my name. I said, go to rogerbrown.net, and that clip showed up on there. So he was like, oh, okay. And we saw the other items on there. So I actually did that with Cracked Magazine. I live in South Carolina. I was in Virginia, and we were at I think it was a grocery store or something. We were buying some groceries for the place we were staying at, and I went in and was writing a check. And since I was out of state, they wanted more than one form of ID. Mm-hmm. And I gave them my driver's license and a credit card. And the lady asked me, did I have one more since I was out of state? She said they'd really like to have 3. And I said, well, if I can show you my name somewhere else, would that work? And she looked at me kind of puzzled, and she goes, what do you mean? I said, I'll be right back. And I went over to where their magazine rack was, pulled a Cracked Magazine off, opened it up, and under the writers section, pointed to my name and said, that's me right here. And I flipped to the page where the work was in the magazine and said, this is me. And she started laughing. She said, your check's fine. And took it. So my wife was dying laughing. She's going, you used a magazine to get a check cashed. So, yeah.
Whatever works.
Hey, don't argue.
All right. Well, I wanted to learn more about you. The invention part was fascinating because I've never heard that side of what you've done. I only knew really the comic book writing and cracked writing and things like that. If people want to get a hold of you, what's the best way to do it?
Through my website, rogerbrown.net.
Okay. And
email and everything's on there.
And is there anything else you'd like to plug at this time? New
well,
inventions?
If anyone's interested in the inventing side, I guess my book, Common Sense Inventing, if you put that in, it'll show up, and it's also on my website.
Okay. And what were the 2 books that you're working on? The frog one, what was that one again?
How to Use Your Frog Properly.
Okay.
And then the other one was Words and Phrases Visually Explained.
Thank you for listening, and thank you, Roger Brown, for being my special guest. Episode number 69 will be coming soon. If you would like to comment and or be a guest on this podcast, please drop me a line at funideas.mark@gmail.com. Become a Patreon of Mark Arnold and Fun Ideas Productions. If everyone listening just contributed $1 a month, that would be a tremendous help in continuing the production of my books and this podcast. Also, subscribe to my YouTube channel. The opening and closing music for the Fun Ideas podcast is provided courtesy of Andrew the Slow Poisoner Goldfarb and is used with permission. This has been the Fun Ideas podcast. This is Mark Arnold speaking. This episode is copyright 2020, Fun Ideas Productions. Thank you, and good night.
Pills in the pink electric church. The final flicker of your